On the night of February 21st, 1969, a company of United States Marines crossed an international border they were never supposed to cross. They moved through the darkness toward a North Vietnamese supply road inside the country of Laos, set up claymore mines along the shoulder, and waited. When the headlights of an enemy truck convoy appeared, they opened fire. The ambush lasted minutes, the political fallout would last years, and the men who fought there would have their sacrifices officially recorded as having happened somewhere else entirely. Today we're going to talk about Operation Dewey Canyon, one of the most successful and most controversial Marine operations of the entire Vietnam War. The mission where the legendary 9th Marines drove deep into enemy territory, discovered massive weapons caches, fought brutal engagements under triple canopy jungle, and then did something Washington had strictly forbidden. They went into Laos. To understand why that border crossing happened, you need to understand what the Marines were looking at in January 1969. Running the length of Vietnam, slipping through the mountains of Laos and Cambodia, was the Ho Chi Minh Trail, the lifeline of the North Vietnamese war effort. Thousands of troops, hundreds of tons of weapons and rice flowed south along it every month. American ground forces were forbidden to touch it. Airstrikes hit it constantly, but could not stop the flow. Major General Raymond G. Davis commanded the 3rd Marine Division in Quang Tri Province, the northernmost sector of South Vietnam. Davis was a Medal of Honor recipient from the Chosin Reservoir in Korea. When he took command in May 1968, he found his Marines sitting in fixed positions along the border, absorbing fire instead of dealing it out. He changed that immediately. By early 1969, intelligence showed as many as 1,000 trucks a day rolling along Route 922 in Laos toward the A Shau Valley. Everything pointed to a massive spring offensive. Davis later said it made him sick to sit on a hill and watch those trucks haul ammunition south to kill Americans. On January 14th, Davis ordered a regiment-sized operation into the Krong Valley, northwest of the A Shau and just north of the enemy's base area, 611 in Laos. The mission went to the 9th Marine Regiment under Colonel Robert H. Barrow, a decorated combat leader who would go on to become Commandant of the Marine Corps. The Krong Valley sat 62 kilometers west of Hue, surrounded by steep mountains and razorback ridges, blanketed by triple canopy jungle on one side and elephant grass on the other, with the Krong River winding through the middle. And just a few kilometers beyond it all sat the Laotian border. On January 22, 1969, the 2nd Battalion, 9th Marines air assaulted into the northern sector to establish fire support base Razor. Bulldozers were flown in by helicopter to clear hilltops for artillery positions. 2 days later, the 3rd Battalion landed on a razorback ridgeline, 6 kilometers south to build fire support base Cunningham, the nerve center of the entire operation. 2 batteries of howitzers moved into Cunningham, giving the regiment a fan of artillery coverage across the area. On January 31st, Phase 2 kicked off as Marine companies pushed south into the jungle. Almost immediately, they found an abandoned North Vietnamese field hospital evacuated just the day before. Bloody bandages and surgical instruments still scattered across the site. Company G secured Hill 1175, while Company F established fire support base Erskine further south. But monsoon rains and thick fog rolled in, grounding helicopters and cutting off resupply. The Marines went days without fresh water or ammunition resupply. They ate cold rations in the mud and kept pushing. On February 2, 1969, the North Vietnamese answered with a message of their own. Between 30 and 40 rounds of 122 mm artillery fire came screaming into fire support base Cunningham from across the Laotian border, killing 5 Marines. The enemy was shooting from positions the Marines were forbidden to attack on the ground. The big Soviet-made field guns could strike deep into the operational area while the crews remained safely in Laos. It was a problem that would define the rest of the operation. 3 days later, on February 5th, Company G began withdrawing from Hill 1175 and walked straight into an ambush. North Vietnamese soldiers opened up with automatic weapons and rocket-propelled grenades, pinning down the 2nd and 3rd platoons in a savage crossfire. The company commander committed his 1st platoon on a flanking maneuver to free the trapped Marines. In the chaos of that fight, a young rifleman named Lance Corporal Thomas P. Noonan Jr. saw a wounded comrade lying in the open under heavy fire. Noonan did not hesitate. He He charged out into the beaten zone, grabbed the man, and began dragging him toward cover. He was hit once. He kept pulling. He was hit again. This time he went down and did not get up, still gripping the collar of the man he was trying to save. His sacrifice inspired the rest of the platoon to charge the enemy positions and reach 3 other wounded Marines who had been cut off. Company G lost 5 killed and 18 wounded. Noonan was awarded the Medal of Honor posthumously. The thick jungle canopy made helicopter evacuation impossible. The dead and wounded had to be carried out on stretchers through the mud. On February 10th, Company H of the 2nd Battalion discovered a massive ammunition cache 5 kilometers northwest of Cunningham. The haul included 363 RPG rounds, 120 rounds of 60 mm mortar ammunition, and crates of small arms. The North Vietnamese had been stockpiling for something big, and the Marines were tearing into their supply depot before they could use it. On February 11, 1969, Phase 3 began in the Krong Valley, and the tempo of violence increased dramatically. The 1st Battalion, 9th Marines, under Lieutenant Colonel George C. Fox engaged a North Vietnamese force that had been assembling to attack fire support base Erskine. The Marines caught them in the open and killed 25 enemy soldiers before they could launch their assault. That same day, Company M repulsed a full platoon-sized attack, killing 18 NVA at a cost of 2 Marines. Company C killed 24 more for the loss of 2 of their own. The jungle around the fire bases was becoming a killing ground. On February 16th, Company K of the 3rd Battalion killed 17 North Vietnamese soldiers in a sharp engagement. The next day, February 17th, Company G of the 2nd Battalion ran into a large enemy force and fought a vicious battle that left 39 NVA dead and 5 Marines killed. That same morning, before dawn, North Vietnamese sappers launched a direct assault on Firebase Cunningham itself. The sappers were elite troops, specialists in penetrating defensive perimeters using stealth and explosive charges. They breached the wire and fought hand-to-hand with the Marine defenders in the darkness. When the sun came up, 37 NVA bodies lay inside the perimeter. 4 Marines were dead. On February 18th, Company A of the 1st Battalion, 9th Marines, encountered a fortified North Vietnamese bunker system. These were not simple fighting holes. The NVA built elaborate complexes of interconnected bunkers with overhead cover thick enough to withstand artillery, connected by trenches and tunnels with interlocking fields of fire. Company A attacked and overran the position, killing 30 enemy soldiers. The following morning, Company C continued the assault against nearby positions and killed another 30 NVA for the loss of just 1 Marine. That afternoon, Company C hit yet another bunker complex. This time the fighting was even more intense. When it was over, 71 North Vietnamese soldiers were dead, and the Marines had captured 2 of the 122 mm field guns that had been shelling Cunningham from across the border. The numbers from that 3-day stretch were staggering. 3 separate bunker systems overrun, over 130 North Vietnamese killed, 2 major artillery pieces captured, napalm strikes called in within 50 meters of Marine positions, and the Marines were still pushing south, deeper into enemy territory, closer to the Laotian border with every step. On February 22, 1969, southeast of Fire Support Base Erskine, Company A of the 1st Battalion was patrolling through dense jungle when they hit a small enemy position and killed 7 NVA soldiers for the loss of 1 Marine. First Lieutenant Wesley L. Fox commanded Company A. Fox was a remarkable Marine, a former enlisted man with 16 years of service who had extended his Vietnam tour. As his company pushed forward, they stumbled into an entrenched North Vietnamese company, dug into a massive bunker complex. This was no small outpost. This was a full-strength enemy unit, fortified and waiting. The battle that followed was one of the fiercest of the entire operation. Fox's Marines attacked into a wall of automatic weapons fire, RPGs and grenades. His 2nd platoon leader went down with serious wounds. Fox sent his executive officer to take over. That officer was killed. Another lieutenant was wounded. Fox himself took multiple wounds but refused to stop fighting. He personally destroyed enemy positions, directed air and artillery strikes, and kept his company in the fight when lesser leaders would have pulled back. When the battle ended, Company A had killed 105 North Vietnamese soldiers and captured more than 24 automatic weapons. The cost was 11 Marines killed and 72 wounded. More than half the company were casualties. Lieutenant Fox received the Medal of Honor. 3 Navy Crosses and 6 Silver Stars were awarded to Company A Marines for that single engagement. 5 days later, Company D of the 1st Battalion uncovered one of the largest enemy weapons caches of the entire war near the base of Hill 1044. The supply depot held 629 rifles, 60 machine guns, 14 mortars, 15 recoilless rifles, 19 anti-aircraft guns, and more than 100 tons of ammunition. Meanwhile, the 3rd Battalion discovered a massive headquarters complex at Tam Boi that included 11 major tunnels carved into solid rock, complete with operating rooms, classrooms, and storage facilities. But the most controversial chapter of Dewey Canyon was already underway. By February 20th, the 2nd Battalion had pushed both Echo and Hotel companies all the way to the Laotian border. From their positions on the ridgeline, the Marines of Hotel Company could look down and see North Vietnamese truck convoys rolling along Route 922 inside Laos, moving supplies and artillery pieces with impunity. Captain David F. Weinkoff commanded Hotel Company, 2nd Battalion, 9th Marines. His men were frustrated watching the enemy operate openly just across the line. Weinkoff later recalled that his Marines were eager to get down to the road and start ambushing. While the High Command debated the political risks of crossing into Laos, Colonel Barrow decided to act. On February 21st, he ordered Weinkoff to take his company across the border that night and set up an ambush along Route 922. Weinkoff's men were exhausted from days of continuous patrolling. He requested a 24-hour delay. Barrow denied it and told him to be back inside South Vietnam by 6:30 the next morning. After dark, Weinkoff took 2 platoons into Laos, moving toward the road about 900 meters away. They stayed off the trails, working down a creek bed and along a ridgeline to minimize noise. When they reached a small river running parallel to Route 922, Weinkoff sent a platoon commander and a sergeant forward to scout an ambush site. While they waited, the Marines watched more traffic pass on the road. An enemy spotlight swept the area, but the Marines held still and remained undetected. By 1 in the morning on February 22nd, Hotel Company was in position, set up in a linear ambush 35 meters beyond the road, with claymore mines aimed at the kill zone. They started hearing trucks almost immediately. 40 minutes later, a single truck and a lone NVA soldier walked through the kill zone. Weinkoff held fire. One truck was not worth compromising the ambush. He waited for a bigger target. At 2:30 in the morning, the headlights of 8 trucks appeared. 3 of them rolled into the kill zone and the convoy stopped. Weinkoff detonated the claymores. The Marines opened up with everything they had, pouring small arms and automatic weapons fire into the vehicles. The forward observer called in artillery. Rounds began slamming into the road. After several minutes of concentrated fire, Weinkoff sent his men forward to confirm the destruction. 3 trucks were burning. 8 NVA soldiers were dead. Hotel Company had not taken a single casualty. Meanwhile, back inside South Vietnam, Barrow had informed Brigadier General Garretson at Task Force Hotel about the border crossing, presenting it more or less as a done deal. The approval chain worked backward. General Creighton Abrams, the overall U.S. commander in Vietnam, formally approved the operation after it had already happened. The success of the ambush changed everything. Barrow pushed for continued operations inside Laos. He sent a message up the chain that was as blunt as any field commander has ever written, telling his superiors that his forces should not be in the area at all if ground interdiction of Route 922 was not authorized. Lieutenant General Richard Stilwell at 4th Corps forwarded the request to Abrams, who reluctantly agreed to a limited incursion of no more than 2 kilometers from the border. On February 24, 1969, Hotel Company was ordered back into Laos to push eastward along Route 922, followed by Echo and Foxtrot companies. The plan was to drive the enemy east into the waiting guns of the 1st and 3rd Battalions positioned along the border inside South Vietnam. Morale in Hotel Company was low. The men were bone-tired after days of patrolling and did not want to leave behind the resupplies that had just arrived, including mortar ammunition and sea rations. But they went. After a 6-hour night march, hotel company set up a hasty ambush. At 11 in the morning, 6 NVA soldiers walked into their kill zone. 4 were killed. The next day, February 25th, hotel company continued east and ran into more enemy resistance. They killed 8 NVA soldiers and captured a 122 mm field gun and 2 40 mm anti-aircraft guns. 2 Marines were killed and 7 wounded in the fighting. Later that same day, an NVA force of about 15 soldiers ambushed a hotel company patrol from fortified bunkers and fighting holes. The patrol called for reinforcements and fought through the position, capturing a second 122 mm gun and killing 2 more enemy soldiers. 3 more Marines died and 5 were wounded. One of the dead was Corporal William D. Morgan. During the bunker fight, 2 Marines had fallen wounded near the enemy positions, pinned down and unable to move. Every attempt to reach them drew murderous fire. Morgan worked his way through the undergrowth to a position near the open road in front of the enemy bunkers. Then he stood up and charged directly into the fire, yelling encouragement to the wounded men. His assault drew every enemy weapon in the complex onto him. Morgan was killed in the middle of the road, but his charge pulled enough fire away from the wounded Marines that the rest of the patrol was able to reach them and drag them to safety. Morgan was 21 years old. He was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. The citation listed the location of his heroism as southeast of Vandegrift Combat Base, Quang Tri Province, Republic of Vietnam. It did not mention Laos. It could not. Hotel company, flanked by Echo and Foxtrot, continued their rapid push east, covering 5 kilometers in 5 days and killing 48 more enemy soldiers. They captured 20 tons of foodstuffs and ammunition. As they neared the South Vietnamese border, enemy resistance faded. By March 1st, the 3 companies were within 1,000 meters of South Vietnam. On March 3rd, they were helicoptered out of Laos back to Vandegrift Combat Base, officially ending the cross-border operations. The 2nd Battalion had lost 8 killed and 33 wounded during the Laotian incursion. For the record, every one of those dead Marines was listed as having been killed in Quang Tri Province, South Vietnam. Meanwhile, the withdrawal of the remaining battalions from the operational area was complicated by the same miserable weather that had plagued the operation from the start. On March 3rd, as the 3rd Battalion 9th Marines pulled back toward Firebase Cunningham, they were ambushed by a North Vietnamese force. In the firefight that followed, Private First Class Alfred M. Wilson threw himself on an enemy grenade to save the Marines around him. He was killed instantly. Wilson became the 4th Medal of Honor recipient of Operation Dewey Canyon, and like the others, his sacrifice was posthumous. The operation officially concluded at 8 in the evening on March 18, 1969, when the last Marines walked back into Vandegrift Combat Base. In 56 days, the 9th Marines had built more than 20 fire support bases, fought dozens of engagements across some of the most forbidding terrain in Southeast Asia, and conducted a cross-border raid into a country where American ground troops were never supposed to set foot. The final tally told the story: 130 Marines killed, 932 wounded. In return, 1,617 North Vietnamese killed. Over 500 tons of arms and munitions seized or destroyed, including more than 1,000 enemy small arms, 800,000 rounds of ammunition, 220,000 pounds of rice, 16 artillery pieces, and 73 anti-aircraft guns. The artillery fired 134,000 rounds. 4 Medals of Honor, 6 Navy Crosses, and 55 Silver Stars were awarded. The entire 9th Marine Regiment received the Presidential Unit Citation. The operation derailed the North Vietnamese spring offensive in I Corps. For the first time in years, the enemy could not mount a major attack in the northern provinces. But the disruption was temporary. The 101st Airborne Division would assault the same area 2 months later during Operation Apache Snow, which produced the infamous Battle of Hamburger Hill. The incursion into Laos was reported in the New York Times in early March. The American ambassador to Laos had not been informed until the operation was well underway. Abrams ordered all references to the border crossing restricted. The families of Marines who died in Laos were told their sons had fallen in South Vietnam. It would take years before the full truth emerged. Corporal William Morgan's parents stood in the White House and accepted their son's Medal of Honor from President Richard Nixon. The citation praised his valor southeast of Vandergrift Combat Base. It said nothing about the road inside Laos, where he actually died, charging into enemy fire so that 2 wounded Marines might live.